We have a large group of people in this country who are always talking about the good old days. But personally, I don't like the good old days. Give me the modern times. I lived during those days when I had to study by a kerosene oil lamp, a lightwood fire, where you had to put the milk in the well to keep it cool, and to do the many other chores around the farm that modern living doesn't envision.
Walter Harrison of Millen is inarguably the best known of a small group of pioneers from rural Georgia who not only helped establish their local electric cooperatives, but also recognized the opportunity for co-ops to better serve their members through state and national organizations.
I had the privilege of working with lots of pioneers like Mr. Walter Harrison and Jimmy Paul Hill and Judge Robert Tysinger and others who were key figures not just in Georgia but at the national level. They were involved in turning the lights on all across America, and these are real, not just heroes in the world of electric membership corporations, but they're just real icons of America.
On December 17, 1940, 7 men met at the Lanier Hotel in Macon. They elected officers and approved bylaws of the Georgia Rural Power Reserve Electric Membership Corporation. Today, it is known as Georgia EMC. They could hardly have imagined that the electric co-ops, which started from scratch in the late 1930s, would surpass 2 million members in 2015. Now, they provide electricity and other valuable services to almost half the state's population. No doubt, the incorporators of Georgia EMC laid a solid foundation for a statewide organization that has stood the test over time and continues to be a strong and essential voice for EMCs.
So just as Georgia EMC is celebrating its 75th birthday this year, the Georgia Chamber is celebrating our 100th anniversary. And it's kind of interesting. Both of our organizations grew from kind of the same thing. It's strength in numbers. Our local chambers wanted a statewide chamber so that we could advocate on their behalf and we could do economic development for the whole state, just like the local EMCs created Georgia EMC to do the same thing, to advocate on their behalf, to develop policies and to do economic development, because there's strength in numbers, and together we can do so much more than we can do alone.
In the 1940s and 50s, Georgia EMC established itself as a political voice to be reckoned with in nationally significant and precedent-setting power victories over federal hydro projects. In the 60s and 70s, the policy battle shifted to saving the REA, the emergence of the EPA, the energy crisis, and inflation, and perhaps most importantly, establishing the Georgia Territorial Electric Service Act.
When I think about the milestones, I think about the changes in the electric distribution system in our state, just that I saw, much less that I heard about, because some of the folks that I worked very closely with were some of the folks who were the first ones in their family to have their lights turned on. And now to look at the way the electric distribution system in Georgia has grown is truly unbelievable. I was very much involved in the authoring of the Georgia Territorial Act back in the mid-70s, along with some other key people. And to see that develop the way it has done, and for the relationship between Georgia Power Company and Georgia Electric Membership Corporation and Oglethorpe Power Corporation to be today what it was, particularly versus the tough times that we went through in the early stages of the territorial law, is really rewarding.
In the era of Enron and the widespread deregulation during the 1980s and 90s, we saw battles ranging from nuclear power and sound environmental policy to even protecting the electric co-op business model itself. In the new millennium, Georgia EMC remains the vessel through which the grassroots voice of the EMCs is amplified on issues ranging from climate change to rural broadband, Regardless of the era, Georgia EMC has helped its members advocate for affordable and reliable energy, ensuring that Georgia citizens enjoy economic opportunity and a quality of life regardless of where they live.
Well, I've been fortunate enough to work with the Georgia EMCs collectively, both in my role as Chief of Staff for Senator Isaacson and then now as Commissioner of the Georgia Department of Economic Development. And the thing that really stands out to me is that EMCs have been an institution. They're not a Johnny-come-lately, been involved in public policy from the beginning and involved in economic development. So when you need somebody that you trust and you know has had a long view of what's good for Georgia, both from a policy perspective and from an economic development perspective, the EMCs have always been there. And that's something I think elected officials have appreciated, the economic development community has appreciated. The partnership that we've always had with the EMCs has been special.
Georgia EMC founders realized early on that the statewide association could play another role in delivering important information to EMC members. In July 1945, the very first issue of Rural Georgia was published, allowing the EMCs to deliver news through a single publication. Little could Georgia's EMC's founders have envisioned that their initial circulation of 32,000 issues would grow more than 30 times over during the next 70 years. Today's monthly circulation is nearly 1 million.
We're in the business of what we believe is growing healthy families and uniting families to the land and each other. And we found that there are few channels better to reach families in Georgia than the Georgia Magazine. You know, a lot of folks think about other magazines more notable, but the reach that the Georgia Magazine has is unbelievable for what we're trying to do. And when we're trying to grow these healthy families, having had an article, it's just amazing the response that we get. But we're able to reach people that typically we wouldn't even think about. How could we reach them? And so it's just been fabulous for us in our effort to look for those people.
Georgia EMC's Community and Economic Development Team has more than 40 years of experience partnering with EMCs, their communities, and the state of Georgia to both attract new jobs and retain existing ones. Georgia is consistently ranked as one of the top states in the country in which to locate and grow a business. Georgia EMC plays a key role in helping the state keep and grow jobs.
So a lot of times when we think about economic development, we think of the helicopter landing and the company coming out and taking a look at the site, but what people really don't see is all the work that goes in on the front end to get that company even to come look at your community. And that's where Georgia EMC's participation in the Georgia Allies and the Georgia Academy for Economic Development and all of those programs, it really comes to fruition right there because they're building the network, they're out there selling the state, they're selling our individual communities every day. They're doing things you'll never see them do. But it's because of that work that we're able to recruit the Kias and the Baxters and the other Caterpillars and the other companies that are coming to Georgia every day.
The Georgia EMC was really a critical partner in the establishment of the Georgia Academy for Economic Development, which brings together community leaders, the private sector, as well as government leaders to really take a look at the region as a whole and how they can work together to help move it forward from an economic development perspective. The EMC has been really involved in the startup of that program and also the curriculum development and implementation over the years.
Even before a statewide team of professionals was assembled to help communities attract and grow jobs, electric cooperatives began pooling resources through Georgia EMC to support our state's premier youth leadership organizations. Georgia EMC's commitment to youth leadership and development spans more than 60 years with organizations like 4-H, FFA, and the Y Club's Youth Assembly.
I think one of the most important areas that Georgia EMC has been involved in is in the area of leadership development for youth. I have a real personal experience having been a Georgia 4-H'er. I appreciated then the great investment that the EMC's made in Georgia 4-H and FFA. And I still see it, and I still appreciate it. It's time, it's not only financial resources, but it's also the time that's put in by your organization's leaders. So I think that's tremendous. But not only the support of 4-H and FFA, but think about the youth tour to Washington, D.C., which has gone on for 50 years, which has provided amazing opportunities for students to get really probably the first experience they've ever had with our nation's capital and how laws are made and how policy is formed. The youth leadership development opportunities through Georgia EMC have just been tremendous and greatly appreciated by everybody involved.
Let's see, when I did the Washington Youth Tour, I was, I believe, 16 or 17. God, that feels so long ago. I just remember being scared at that time, and I just never in a million years would have predicted the things that transpire between doing the Washington Youth Tour and being where I am now. Needless to say, I honestly would not be where I am right here in New York City, living and working as a segment producer for the #1 morning show in the country without an initial experience like the Washington Youth Tour. It literally opened so many doors for me, and I'm not just saying that to be figurative, but it really blew the door open to so much and made so many things possible for me.
More than 2,500 high school students have earned the leadership experience of a lifetime through the EMC's very own Washington Youth Tour, which Georgia EMC has organized and led since first taking 12 students to our nation's capital in 1965.
All of the services that Georgia EMC provides to our members are very important to us. But nothing is more important than to make sure that EMC employees have the proper skills and training to return home safely each night. The job of an EMC lineman is not for the faint of heart. Most people are not interested in climbing 40 feet up a pole to work with high voltage day or night in the freezing cold or blazing heat of Georgia summers. But thankfully, EMC linemen are not like most people. Georgia EMC is proud to join our state's leaders in special events, giving linemen the recognition they deserve as everyday heroes. But the rubber really meets the road as our employees deliver over 2,000 safety programs across the state each year. Through classes, training programs, and coordination of statewide and national safety accreditation programs, we keep safety our top priority. The leadership, commitment, and service that the EMCs provide at their local level makes what we do at the statewide level possible. It's a privilege to work with organizations that are so committed to improve their communities and the way of life in those communities, make them better places to live. Georgia EMC is proud to be the EMC's advocate at the state capitol, to help grow jobs all across our state, to support the development of our next generation of leaders, to educate consumers on issues that are important to all of us, and to promote the incredible people, places, and products of our great state to the entire world. It's a privilege for us to provide service to you and serve you at Georgia EMC. We've been partners together since 1940, improving the way of life throughout the state of Georgia. I know that if we continue to work together, the future will be bright for all of us.